Forward. So good morning. It is Tuesday, December 15th, 2020. We're 10 days away from Christmas. We're going to be continuing our theme on celebrity and celebrity responsibilities. Oops, that's the wrong poll. Let me put the right poll up. Okay, so I just put a poll up. Good morning, Eli. If you could answer the poll, the question is, I would want to be rich and a celebrity. So you can either put a resounding yes, that's supposed to be no with an exclamation point, maybe, or more money, more problems. Which one you think?
Picked the wrong one.
Which one did you want to hit, Zenelia?
I wanted to do no.
Okay. Which one did you hit? More money, more problems?
Yeah.
So that's two no's. Rashawn and Nasir, can you vote, please? Eli, were you able to pick? Were you able to vote? I can't see who else voted. Rashawn, were you able to vote? Okay, so there's only one more person that needs to vote. Okay, cool. Thank you. All right, so let's look at the results of our poll. We only have 4 people, but we're going to look at it anyhow. All right, so according to I would want to be rich and a celebrity, I got 1 yes, and I think it was 3 no's. Neil, you wanted it to be no, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So what would be before we get started, what would be behind your reasonings, the person that said, yeah, they want to be rich and celebrity? What would be your reasoning behind, you can put it in the chat if you want, what would be your reasoning behind wanting to be rich and being a celebrity? Do you think that your life would be easier? Do you think you would have more responsibility, less responsibility?
I don't really care about the celebrity part. I like the rich part though.
Okay, all right. All right, cool. I can dig that. You like the rich part.
Yeah.
Um, but okay, so I guess another question I ask you is being rich, like if you were rich with a lot of money, would you feel like you had any type of responsibility to give back to the people that, may have helped raise you or,
For,
brought you
s-
up?
for sure, yeah.
So you have a heart for sharing with those. Okay, Rashawn said, thank you. Thank you. Um, so the rich part is pretty probably, I think everybody would mind being rich a day or so. Being a celebrity is something different. Rashawn said no. Why would you not want to be a celebrity, Rashawn and Zanelia? Why would you not want to be a celebrity? What kind of
Me, I don't really want to be known.
you don't want to be known? Okay.
I just want to hear the money.
I don't want attention.
Okay. That's kind of I was looking like. Imagine like just getting up in the morning, like you just trying to go get some breakfast from the drive-through, and you got people jumping out the cameras and taking pictures of you and your kids, and you just woke up. You're not looking the best. Having people following you around and trying to be involved in your everyday everyday life. That would be definitely a drawback for me. You lose your sense of privacy, or your autonomy, we call that. So if it was me, I think I'm on the same page as Eli, where I would take the money, but I would rather not be particularly known for having the money, because we know that cheddar breeds envy, right? That having money causes other people to become envious of you, and sometimes it can be having more problems. More money can equal having more enemies or more problems than you had before. We see this with a lot of the a lot of the young artists today, getting killed over, perceived beefs with other people, or people thinking that they got it made, or thinking that they have, all this.
Yeah.
That's kind of I think that would be like a drawback for me, is people thinking, oh, that I always have money. Um, even just being local celebrity, people are going to think that, this guy has extra money to give me. So let's go through let's review. We talked about what a celebrity is. And a celebrity is somebody who has a unique set of talents. What differentiates a celebrity from other people is their ability to do some type of performance. Maybe it's an athletic feat, maybe it's a musical feat, acting feat. So they're able to do something that most people can't do. So that's why I was asking you, why would you want to be a celebrity if you could? Celebrities are able to do endorsements, and this is going to be your second checkpoint. I think I put it up last night. But celebrities are able to see endorsements. You see endorsements all the time. You just don't realize that you see them all the time. So if you see Patrick Mahomes doing something for State Farm, that's an endorsement. If you see Kevin Garnett doing a commercial for any type of product, or you see anybody famous doing something for a product, that's called an endorsement. Philanthropy. Does anybody remember what the word philanthropy means? It was in our last. It was in our last slide. What's the word philanthropy mean?
Give back. Somebody who's a little wealthy give back to somebody needy.
Thank you, Zanelia. So being a philanthropist, or being someone who does philanthropy, would be someone who is not only famous and has the money, but is able to give it back to the community. And our question has been, do celebrities have a responsibility to take on social issues and give back to the communities from what they came from? And we're going to look back at a different side of it today. We're going to look what happens when celebrities stand up for social issues, or athletes in this case, and they're chastised because of it. So this was our last lesson. This had to do with celebrities and endorsements. I'm not going to go through this. So this is philanthropy. Some of the drawbacks. This is a 2-in-1 lesson. Drawbacks of philanthropy. And so here's checkpoint number 2. Okay, this is up on Summit. And what you're going to do is you're going to create a hypothetical endorsement. So like sometimes you'll see LeBron for Sprite, right? Or, so-and-so for sneakers, or for music, or for headphones, or for whatever. You're going to create your own endorsement. So you can take, if you go down here at the bottom, it says your favorite entertainer. So I don't care who your favorite entertainer is, all right? It can be anybody that's your favorite entertainer. And I want you to create like a banner, a billboard, or an advertisement showing your celebrity for their cause. It's like Cenelia or Rashawn, who's your favorite entertainer? Like if it had to be a rapper or an actor or a singer, like who's your favorite celebrity if you had to pick one? Okay, so Zenalia says Lil Baby. Okay, Kevin Hart, cool. All right, so take your two celebrities when you can say, we could say Kevin Hart for the humane treatment of animals, or Kevin Hart. I think Kevin Hart may actually have an actual foundation or has done some philanthropy. So I want you to take your celebrity and plug in these holes. So, Zenelia, I'm sorry, I just have a hard time calling. I have a hard time respecting anybody that's a grown man that calls himself
I
little
know.
little baby. I mean, that just sounds like I don't know if that's me as a man, a grown man, but there's no way I'm walking around as a grown man and calling myself little baby. Like, I don't know, it just don't sound right. But regardless, regardless, if you could think of something that is there anything that in his music that he talks about that he would like to change in society?
It's a whole song.
Huh?
It's a whole song based on like what happened in 2020.
Okay. So you can turn that into like an advertisement, or you can do the negative side of philanthropy. Like, why is it negative? How can celebrities lose endorsements um, by taking the wrong social stance, such as kneeling or raising a fist at the Olympics or the national anthem? Okay. So that was our checkpoint number 2. That's up on Summit. So let's go into our lesson for our today. Okay. So our question, essential question is, what do athletes and celebrities risk when they speak out or protest? That second word, what does it mean to protest something? Eli, do you have an idea what it means to protest something? We'll put it in the chat. What does the word protest mean? Does it mean to agree with someone?
No.
So Eli, you're saying that protest means to disagree with something, right?
Yeah.
Good. So to protest means to disagree with a social stance, a political stance. Um, there's a list here. You guys can look at this for your own edification. This is just a list of some people who have lost endorsements because they took stance on political matters. Some celebrities, risk losing millions of dollars when they speak out. So we're going to talk about today about talking out in 1960s. So what do athletes and celebrities risk when they speak out? Well, we could say they risk losing their reputation. They risk losing their money. They risk losing the trust of the community, or they alienate a certain group of people. So if I stand up and say if I stand up in a sporting environment and say Black Lives Matter, for some reason in America, there are people who find that to be a controversial statement. Not saying other people's lives don't matter, but just simply saying the statement Black Lives Matter. We saw this start in the NBA. I don't know. Did any of you gentlemen watch the football game last night? The Browns game last night, Monday Night Football. Any of y'all watch football? But now in the NFL, you'll see players wearing masks that say Black Lives Matter. You'll see them with the name Breonna Taylor. You'll see, on the back of their helmets, things that are speaking up against race relations in America. And in 2020, this is a common phenomenon. Today we're talking about the 1960s. The 1960s were a very turbulent time in American history for civil rights movements and equality. So in the 1960s, you saw the rise of many Black power groups, civil rights movements, because due to the treatment of Black Americans. Since slavery, since Jim Crow, since segregation, in the continent of North America, the treatment of Black people has been, the only word I can think of is appalling. It's been inhumane, it's been torturous, it's been cruel, it's just been flat out wrong. And one of my favorite, if you look right behind me, right here, you'll see several pictures of Malcolm X. And Malcolm X did not believe in pacifism. He did not believe in sitting and taking things lying down when it came to racial inequality. Instead, he would stand up to it and fight. He had a statement that said, we need to change the state of the American Negro by any means necessary. Whether those means be violent or non-violent, whether those actions mean losing our freedom or in his case, literally losing our lives. So I'm going to play about 4-minute video, and this is just going to give you an idea of the temperature of American culture in the 1960s. So let me put this on real quick. Should be able to click on this. Got it. So I'm gonna share this.
Can't wait. Introducing all new Live Casino at Unibet. Play anytime, anywhere.
Just make sure this is shared.
I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land.
Human progress is neither automatic nor inevitable. Welcome to WatchMojo.com, and today we'll be learning more about the history of the American Civil Rights Movement. The end of the American Civil War in 1865 effectively meant the end of slavery, but African Americans were in for a long struggle before they were finally awarded equal rights. As of 1870, all eligible male citizens were able to vote. However, blacks were discouraged by violence and eventually legal stipulations. In 1896, the Supreme Court ruled to maintain racial segregation in private businesses in a case called Plessy versus Ferguson. Soon broadened to include schools, many southern states applied this separate but equal mentality to all aspects of life. However, this led to the application of Jim Crow laws, which resulted in blacks being treated as second-class citizens. Segregated schools, public transit, restrooms, water fountains, and more continued well into the 1900s. In 1909, a group of prominent black and white campaigners created the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, or NAACP. Their goal was to increase racial equality and challenge issues like the Jim Crow laws. Unfortunately, it was between 1910 and 1930 that white supremacist group the Ku Klux Klan saw its biggest expansion amid increased racial friction. Following the First World War, the NAACP was devoted to ending lynching by white vigilantes. By mid-century, the group became instrumental in the Brown versus the Board of Education of Topeka court case. This class action suit, filed in 1951, asked that segregation in schools be struck down. Taken to the Supreme Court, the case resulted in the first integrated school in the United States to open in the fall of 1955. Encouraged by the decision, the civil rights movement began to hold high-profile boycotts, marches, sit-ins, and other peaceful protests. These included 1955's Montgomery bus boycott in support of Rosa Parks. A watershed moment came in 1957 when a high school in Arkansas admitted a group of African American students nicknamed the Little Rock Nine. Protested by fellow students, the governor, and even the state's National Guard, President Dwight Eisenhower eventually intervened to ensure the students' safe passage. By 1962, universities also began integrating, though black students were still met with protests and violence. The Southern Freedom Movement continued into the 60s with support from newly elected President John F. Kennedy and his brother, Attorney General Robert Kennedy. The violence of the Birmingham, Alabama campaign influenced the president to fully endorse the movement.
A great change is at hand, and our task, our obligation, is to make that revolution, that change, peaceful and constructive for all.
On June 19, 1963, he proposed a civil rights bill to Congress, which was approved in 1964 after his death with support from President Lyndon Johnson. The bill struck down existing legislation that allowed for discrimination, and its approval was largely influenced by Martin Luther King Jr. and the March on Washington of August 1963.
With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discourse of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood.
Capturing the attention of the media and the population, this event attracted hundreds of thousands of people in support of civil rights. Following that, the Voting Rights Act of 1965 ended the prejudiced voting system. Instantly effective, blacks began voting and running for public office. However, just days later, on August 11th, a violent six-day riot in the Los Angeles neighborhood of Watts resulted in 34 deaths. This was indicative of a period of racially motivated violence that occurred in the mid to late 1960s. This era also saw the rise of Black Power, led in large part by Stokely Carmichael, in opposition to extremists like the Ku Klux Klan. This ideology was exemplified by the Black Panther Party, which followed the principles set forth by Malcolm X. Rising to prominence in the 1950s, his radical ideas advocated militancy for blacks.
Black people are dissatisfied. They're dissatisfied not only with the white man, but they're dissatisfied with these Negroes who have been sitting around here posing as leaders and spokesmen for black people and actually making the problem worse instead of making the problem better.
He remained an influential and controversial human rights activist until his assassination in 1965. The murders of civil rights leaders continued when Martin Luther King Jr. was killed in April 1968 and Robert Kennedy 2 months later. Despite racial tensions continuing into the 1990s, progress has been measurable. The election of President Barack Obama in 2008 is seen by many to be a culmination of centuries of work in favor of racial equality.
This is the meaning of our liberty and our creed, why men and women and children of every race and every faith can join in celebration across this magnificent mall, and why a man whose father less than 60 years ago might not have been served at a local restaurant can now stand before you to take a most sacred oath.
The civil rights movement in the 1960s in the United States. The United States started to see a radical shift in the way that people decided to respond to the oppression of Jim Crow laws, the oppression of unfair voting rights, the misrepresentation of wealth, the misdistribution of wealth. All of these things that have been going on in America since America started. And to put this in perspective for you, I know this seems like quite such a long time ago, but 1968 was only 9 years before I was born. So it's not like it's 100 lifetimes off. It's something that took place fairly recently in American history. So we see these rise in these movements, and the catalyst for some of this was Malcolm X and his any means necessary beliefs. So just for a question to keep you involved, do you agree with Malcolm X's idea of civil liberties or civil equality by any means necessary? Or do you need a little bit more clarification on what he was talking about? Do we agree or disagree? So I'm asking you, for those people who were held in bondage, for the people today who are, still, for people of color today in this country who are disproportionately arrested, disproportionately shot by police, disproportionately put in poverty, disproportionately put in miseducation, institutionalization, incarceration. Should Black people as a whole in this country fight back for their civil liberties and civil rights? I have my opinion. I need yours. What do we think, guys? Okay, thank you, Destiny, for agreeing. Anyone else have any input on that? Do you think that trying to lobby to the government? Thank you, Rashawn. Okay, good. So we do agree that Black Americans should continue to fight for social equality. We should be fighting for wage equality. We should be fighting for political equality. And a lot of those things that they were fighting for in the 1960s, we have not been satisfied as a culture and as a people. The same type of oppression that went on in the 1960s is the same type of oppression that's going on today. The same systemic racism, the same lacking and keeping people from jobs, keeping people from opportunities. We just saw 4 years of administration where the standing executive of the United States could not denounce white supremacy. Just couldn't do it, just would not denounce white supremacy. So it shows us that sometimes we go full circle. So Mr. Townsend, what's this got to do with sports? What does this have to do with athletes? We had a civil rights movement. Well, during the American Civil Rights Movement in 1968, the Olympics were threatened to be boycotted by all Black athletes for the unfair treatments of Black Americans. So they decided to take on their shoulders and say, you know what? We're not going to go and perform, run, jump, these incredible athletic feats for a country who doesn't even respect us at home, who doesn't give us the same treatment at home. Why should we go to Mexico City or at that point, anywhere else in the world and represent a nation that does not represent us? So they talked about boycott. That's one of the words you're going to need to know. So if you are taking notes or if you want to take a screenshot, you're definitely going to want to know what a boycott is. And a boycott is not, in this case, it was not taking part in Olympic Games due to the treatment of Black Americans. So this idea was started, I'm trying to remember the brother's name. Oh, why is it not coming to me right now? I know it's Harry something. But right before the 1968 Olympic Games, the Black athletes decided that they were going to boycott. Now I'm going to show you why. I'm going to let you hear their voices. I'm going to let you hear their point of view on why they decided to stand up, even in an Olympic athletic setting, to stand up for the rights of other Black Americans. So let me let you listen to this real quick. Oops, that's the wrong one. I'm sorry, I got like 100 tabs open right now. Okay.
Introducing now, just like
this Olympic track and field team is.
Okay, let me share this with you. So this is going to explain to us the stance that the 1968 Olympic team was taking. Not just the 1968, but all the black athletes had decided to boycott the Olympics. Oh man, let me find this. Where's it at? I think this is it right here. Okay. Can we see the screen now? Can we see the athlete on the screen with USA on his shirt here? All right, thank you, Rashawn. Okay, so now we're going to watch this video, and it's going to explain to us why the athletes, from their own mouths, were deciding to make a boycott and make a stand against racial injustice.
Is considered one of the greatest ever assembled to represent the U.S. in the Olympics. They won 28 medals and set 8 world records at the Games in Mexico City. The team included some of the fastest runners in the world at the time, like sprinters Tommy Smith and John Carlos, who made history when they accepted their medals and then raised their fists during the playing of the U.S. national anthem in a protest full of symbolism. And they almost didn't even show up that year.
Black men and women athletes have unanimously voted to fully endorse and participate in a boycott of the World Olympic Games in 1968.
Members of the team threatened to stay home in protest of racist treatment of black athletes in America.
They will not participate in the 1968 Olympics in Mexico City unless something is done about these terrible evils and injustices.
So in case our black boys don't want to go,
What would they have to do for you to go to Mexico?
Boycott is still on. The story of this silent protest and the boycott that almost was starts with the buttons all 3 medal winners wore that day, the Olympic Project for Human Rights.
It's back. The only sandwich so sweet, salty, and...
Just skip it over this ad.
The Olympic Project for Human Rights, or OPHR, was founded in 1967 by sociologist, educator, and former star athlete Dr. Harry Edwards. It was a coalition of prominent Olympic athletes that threatened to derail American Olympic glory by opting out of the Games, to protest the racism in sports that, for decades, had gone unaddressed. In the mid-20th century, sports seemed to be a leading example of improved racial equality in the United States. Black athletes like football player Kenny Washington and baseball player Jackie Robinson broke racial barriers by joining professional leagues in 1946 and 1947, which, until that point, had been whites only. College and professional sports teams gradually integrated from there, years ahead of racial segregation legally ending in the United States.
So the media began to promote the black athlete as a symbol that racial democracy existed in the United States. If Jackie Robinson can make it, then why can't other blacks make it? And so it was kind of a factor that was used to dismiss the question of institutionalized racism.
But in the 1960s, the myth of racial progress in America began to dissolve. The Civil Rights Act ended legal segregation in 1964, but Black Americans continued to face institutionalized racism and police brutality.
Integration simply wasn't successful in terms of improving black people's lives, and you needed to force further change.
Years of frustration ultimately erupted in widespread violent riots.
I think the further we get away from it, we underestimate the influence of the riots. The riots happened in a lot of urban cities across America. Black people still live in terrible socioeconomic conditions in the cities, and that was just as much a problem as Jim Crow laws. So how do you attract attention to that?
A growing Black Power movement and Black student movement in the 1960s emboldened Black athletes to speak up about the racial injustices they endured off the field.
There's no difference between a black and a white athlete. We're all out there sweating, we run on two legs. But it's a difference in the way society treats us after we leave the track.
But with the 1968 Olympics coming up, Black athletes saw an opportunity to push for change.
The idea of a Black Olympic boycott had been around since 1959, and it went through various fits and stops until you get to the Black Power Conference in 1967. And the Black Power Conference basically argued that you should use any means possible to force the government to pay attention to institutionalized racism.
For Harry Edwards, that meant organizing the Olympic Project for Human Rights.
And I think one of those means that are necessary right now is the Olympic boycott movement and the whole revolt of the black athlete in this country.
He realized that he could use black sports participation as a way to attract attention to the problem.
The OPHR had 5 key demands, among them being to disinvite South Africa and Rhodesia, 2 countries practicing apartheid, from competing in the Games, the removal of openly racist International Olympic Committee President Avery Brundage, and hiring black coaches to U.S. teams. The potential boycott became a hot topic in the news and of debate among athletes.
All the black athletes want to run, but we don't want to close the door on millions of black people here in the United States. I don't see a boycott really helping the Negro cause.
In the months leading up to the Games in Mexico City, the OPHR kept members of the press guessing whether they would attend or not.
We will let you know about the future of your Olympic team when we deem it proper and when we feel that you can handle that kind of information. Right now, we just don't think that you're ready.
Tom, when will come a determination whether you, Lee Evans, and others will or will not boycott the Olympics?
I wish I could tell you.
Ultimately, it came down to a vote.
The decision was made that if there wasn't really a kind of unified or the majority of that black athletes would participate, the boycott would be called off because those who did boycott, like Tommy Smith, would have been boycotting in vain. Another black person simply would have taken their place.
Even though most of the OPHR's demands remained unmet, the athletes headed to Mexico City with plans to make their own demonstration if the opportunity arose, which it did on October 16th, following the men's 200-meter final. OPHR members Tommy Smith and John Carlos won gold and bronze, respectively, and Smith set a new world record. After the race, they solemnly approached the medal stand, shoeless, wearing black socks, accepted their medals, and just as the U.S. national anthem began to play, did this.
Ashley Flowers, your Supernatural podcast was the only thing that kept me entertained this year. Well,
sorry about the ad, students.
For the full duration of the Star-Spangled Banner, Smith and Carlos bowed their heads and each raised a black-gloved fist in the air to protest the racial injustice in their home country and show solidarity with those fighting for equality. The fists are not the only symbolic gesture in this image, as Tommy Smith explained later.
The right glove signifies the power within Black America. The left glove signified Black unity. The scarf that was worn around my neck signified blackness. John Carlos and me wore black socks without shoes to also signify our poverty.
Additionally, John Carlos wore his jacket unzipped, a violation of Olympic etiquette, to show solidarity with working-class Americans. He also wore beads to honor victims of lynching. And finally, all 3 medal winners, including silver medalist Peter Norman of Australia, wore
buttons reading Olympic Project for Human Rights. There were some boos in the stadium last night.
This moment was the ultimate manifestation of the work of Harry Edwards and the OPHR to intersect outspoken political activism with sport. and it ended Smith and Carlos's Olympics.
Well, the International Olympic Committee suspended them Friday. Their credentials were taken away, and they were told they could not stay in Mexico.
They were dropped from the U.S. Olympic team and given 48 hours to leave Mexico. Sports journalist Howard Cosell criticized the U.S. Olympic Committee's decision in this fiery broadcast from Mexico City.
They say the games are sports, not politics, something separate and apart from the realities of life. But the black athlete says he is a human being before he is an athlete, that he wants equality everywhere, not just within the arena.
Tommie Smith and John Carlos were saying black athletes don't have it made in American society. We may be famous, but we face the same discrimination that other black people do. And we don't appreciate being used as a way to counter the black struggle coming out of black communities. Black athletes are black. People have multiple identities. I think Colin Kaepernick is representing a voice in the black community, which is the same thing I think that Carlos and Smith were saying, that the black struggle is more than just about integration and assimilation. It's also about empowering this particular community. And people like Tommie Smith, Harry Edwards, John Carlos came from poor black communities.
Which is why this protest on the Olympic medal stand wasn't just about sports, as Tommie Smith explained to Howard Cosell the next day.
Do you think you represented all black athletes in doing this?
I can say I represented Black America. I'm very proud to be a black man and also to have won the gold medal. And this, I thought, I could represent my people by letting them know that I'm proud to be a black man.
Black athletes in America.
They will not participate in the 19...
Okay, so that kind of leads us up to getting here to the end here. But so the 1968 games, we just watched a video explaining why the athletes were choosing not to participate. So what was the reasoning behind Dr. Harry Edwards and Tommie Smith and John Carlos and these athletes? Why did they not want to participate in the 1968 games? What was their reasoning for not wanting to participate? Why were they going to boycott the games? Who were they boycotting for? What were they boycotting against? Rashawn, do you have an idea of why they were boycotting after watching the video? What was the reasoning for the black athletes not wanting to take part in the 1968 Olympic Games? Sonelia, Destiny, Nasir, Eli, anybody have, after watching that, what was the reasoning? What was the thought processes of these athletes when it came to the 1968 Olympic Games? Why did they not want to participate? Are we all sleeping?
No, just a little lost. I'm with Rob.
Okay, I got a response here. Good, thank you, Destiny. That's a good way of saying it. That they were human beings before being athletes. That there were people in America who look like them, who were being treated less than human beings, who were being treated unfairly. We saw in the first video. Oh, okay. All right, Rashad. They were boycotting because they didn't believe that the American Negro and black people in America were being treated fair. So they decided to do a protest. Thank you, Destiny. So 1968, how much time do I have left? I got about 7 minutes here. 1968, you can look up on your own. I put some highlights of what happened in 19. And they were, thank you, excellent, Destiny. They were protesting the afflictions of black Americans. That's very good verbiage of the way you're saying that, Destiny. I appreciate that. That they were protesting the afflictions of black Americans, which was Jim Crow laws, segregation, mass incarceration, police brutality. A lot of the same things that are taking place in American society today were taking place almost 50 years ago. So the same type of things. So what happened at the 1968 games? We saw, this is an iconic picture here of Tommy Smith and John Carlos. And there's a third guy on here called, his name is Norman. And we'll get to him here in a little bit. But these two gentlemen decided on the podium in front of the world to don black gloves. And everything that they did was symbolism, which means it represented something else. So for Tommy Smith's hand, this hand, right hand, that glove represented the power and the unity of black people as a whole. This one represented black, I believe it was black freedom, or those who were oppressed. The beads around his neck were to honor those who were part of being lynching. And they wore no shoes. And the reason that they wore no shoes was to protest the poverty that they had come from as black Americans in the United States. So there's a couple articles here, and you can read those on your own. I'll put these on Summit for you. So they were considered one of the most talented teams in history. And they were going to, like Destiny said, they were going to boycott the 1968 games because of racial injustice in the United States. They did not end up doing that because they realized if they did, they would actually, and this is the risk involved in getting yourself involved in social. Yes, good. Thank you, Destiny. You're paying attention a little bit better than me this morning. His jacket unzipped was a sign of, disrespect and it was to show the unity with the working class of America. Thank you, Destiny. So I'm going to review that. So what type of symbolism did they stand for? Well, the scarf said he stood for blackness itself. So as the other athletes waited to go to the podium, Carlos and Smith told Norman, who was the third gentleman involved, that they planned to use their win as an opportunity to protest. Because even though they did not get a chance to boycott the game, they decided that they would do something there that was dramatic, that would catch people's attention. And so when they went to the podium, they decided to appear on the podium bearing symbols of protest and strength. Black sock feet without shoes to bring attention to black poverty, beads to protest lynching, and raised black gloves fists to represent their solidarity and support with black people and oppressed people around the world. So Smith and Carlos expressed their first right to protest. And we're going to have to kind of stop here. So we'll just ask you one more question. What happened to Tommy Smith and John Carlos after they protested in the Olympics? What was their response from the Olympic Committee? What did they ask them to do? So what happened to Carlos and Smith because of their expression of protest? Good. they got fired and they were asked to leave the country. So this was one of the risk involved of standing up in a social setting and saying, as an athlete, I am still a man of color. I am still a black man. So I stand in solidarity. They basically got fired. So in your opinion, this will be my last question. Was it worth them risking their Olympic careers to stand up for the rights of other people? And would it be something that you do? I mean, think about how hard it is to get to the Olympics. I mean, it's a lot of work to get to the Olympics. Okay, Destiny says she would. So this is the dilemma that we're going to be discussing. Good. Destiny, you're on point today. Like, your brain is just on 100% today. And I thank you for your input. And if you guys can't see what she said, I'm always black and human first. So before they were an athlete, before they were a celebrity, they're first off a human being. And in the United States and all around the world, they were a black human being first. So we're going to stop there. Your checkpoint 2 is up. I like to try to have that in before today is the 15th. You're going to go on break on the 22nd. So if you can get checkpoint number 2 in for me by the 22nd. Checkpoint 3 and 4 will be a combined project, and you're going to be researching a social movement. So I know Naima, I saw you came in, and Shanice, I saw you came in. So if you guys have any extra questions, you can send them to my email. Here's my email. So Destiny, Rashawn, Eli, thank you guys for all your participation. There's only about 4 slides left on this, so we'll stop with the 4 slides. And the next class right before Christmas. We're going to start looking at a little bit more modern. I know we already discussed Colin Kaepernick, but we're going to start looking at a little bit more modern protest of inequality. Okay? So thank you everybody this morning for coming. Nasir, thank you for being the first one here. I appreciate it this morning and sticking around. Everyone else have a good day, and I will see you folks on Thursday. Okay? Okay, guys. Have a great day.